Welcome to a Nerdy Sports podcast. I'm your host, Tim, and joining me today, none other than Scotty Pierce. How you doing, Scotty?
I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
Luckily the end of Game 7 was a disappointment enough that it lulled you to sleep in the end, so it was easy to fall asleep.
Dude, so I'm thinking, so you got to sleep easy last night, I guess, right? That makes sense. Because I didn't. I sure didn't. Even the blowout didn't help. You know, I was too ramped up. I wanted to see what Scott Van Pelt was going to say and see what Eric Spoelstra was going to say post game. And, you know, he just kept talking about like, they made us better. They made us better. They forced us to be better. Like literally 1 year ago today, May 29th, 2022, we were in the same position and Jimmy Butler called it. We will be in the same position next year and we will get the job done. They were in Game 7 in Boston. They were down 13 points with less than 4 minutes to go. And the Miami Heat surged to get close, but they were one Jimmy Butler bucket away from making it to another finals. But in Jimmy Butler's first year with the team, they went to the finals versus the LA Lakers. I mean, everybody said it was a bubble, it was a fluke. Then they go to the playoffs the next year to get swept by Milwaukee. And then, of course, the next year was going to Game 7, the Eastern Conference Finals versus Celtics, losing one shot away, and everybody didn't believe in them. And I'm like, no, you got to believe in this team. This is a good team, you know, but they lose Tyler Hero. They lose Victor Oladipo. They're already pretty, you know, I guess, lacking in talent, to say the least, but they did it. How do you feel about Jimmy Butler's performance overall? And do you think he deserved MVP over Caleb Martin?
That's a tough one. I'm definitely very curious on your opinion on who deserved it. I feel like it easily could have gone either way. The vote went super close. And in that situation, I feel good with him getting it because if it's really close, I think you have to look at the other factors in it. And he is the heart and the engine of the team. So, it was close enough that I feel it's good going that way. Like in hindsight, a lot of people look at the year Iguodala won MVP of the finals and they say, you know what, maybe it should have been Steph. But in the moment they gave it, this reminded me a little bit like that. If this went to Martin, maybe you would have gone back and looked in hindsight a couple years from now and be like, really, we didn't give it to Jimmy? I'm a little surprised. So I think it was close enough, and I'm not taking anything away from Caleb, but it was close enough that I could say, you know what, I'm okay with them giving it to Jimmy because now it's neck and neck. You start looking at the little things. You start looking at the motivational factors, the off the court, the locker room. You start looking at all that, the little things. And then let's be honest, you throw in the name, the star power comes in there. Anytime somebody's voting, I don't care who you are. And I'm not judging you. I'd probably be the same if you're a news person, sportscast. You're going to look at the bigger name, generally is going to tilt you one way or the other. If it's like 50-50, get that 0.1%, you're like, oh, I mean, this guy's a star. We should go this way. So I'm good with it.
It's a leadership thing, like you're mentioning. It's in the locker room. It's at the press conference. It's constantly reminding everybody, be calm. We're going to have our beers. We're going to play our spades. We're going to have our fun. We're not overstressing this. We're not overthinking this. But, I mean, to be honest, even in Game 7, Caleb Martin had obviously an incredible game. But Jimmy still scored 28 points, and Caleb Martin only scored 26. Caleb Martin went from a guy where he's averaging 9.6 points per game. And then all of a sudden now he's like averaging 40 minutes a game. He got 21 points in Game 6, 26 points in Game 7. He's definitely incredible. I love that he got 4 votes, but it's Jimmy Butler's reward. That's his award. That's what he deserves. He didn't have the absolute best series of all time, but he was always calm. And he led the team. He made everybody else around him better. He gave Duncan Robinson and Gabe Vincent ammunition and confidence. And of course, Eric Spoelstra, greatest coach of all time, over over Phil Jackson, over Steve Kerr, over Greg Popovich. Probably not Pat Riley, but Anyway,
I think right now you'd say he's definitely the greatest coach in the league, in my opinion. I do think he's
sure.
Pat's Pop. All time, that's a little harder to say.
I know, I
But
know.
listen, great consolation prize for Cabo, because if he's worried, his consolation prize is going to be he's been wiping his tears with dollar bills soon. He's going to get a big contract. He's about to hit a big payday. So don't have too
Yeah,
much pity
buddy.
for him if you're feeling bad. He's about to get paid, and
Pity for the guy.
you know,
No, he's an
well, I mean, not winning
NBA
the
head
vote. You know,
coach. He's been coaching
he's
for 15 years. He got to coach Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, like absolute amazing players. He's married to, the supermodel that was a cheerleader for the Miami Heat. I think he's doing pretty well. The man is disciplined. I must tell you that. Like just the way he like presents himself, he's definitely a really structured individual and really, from his diet, like I don't know what he's eating, but like the man hasn't gained an ounce since, you're sort of similar to that. You're always like taking care of your
you know,
fitness, always in the same like wavelength, not gaining 50 pounds, losing 50 pounds like me. You're kind of always maintaining, taking care of yourself, and it tells me a lot about somebody when they're like, able to be so disciplined with themselves. They're disciplined with their craft, and he definitely cares a lot about this team. And he was motivated equally as Jimmy Butler. Like they were motivated to come back and make it happen. And I love that they got swept by Milwaukee and then they beat Milwaukee this year. And they barely lost to the Celtics, yet they came back and did it again. And let's be honest, I haven't even looked at the odds. I'm sure the Nuggets are like at least minus 350, maybe minus 400. The odds of the Miami Heat to win this series, to win the finals, to win four more, it's going to be tough, but I'm just
mhm.
happy we're here. I'm just happy we're in the finals.
Yeah, and it makes you think how because they had a, let's just be honest, not a good regular season. Flat out, you could call it bad,
Awful, awful.
right?
Negative
That
point differential.
it
Negative.
blurs the vision, because you look at this. The Celtics are considered perennial contenders, although some might say a little disappointing, but they've been to 5 or 7 Eastern Conference Finals. They made a finals. Like
Yeah.
with the start of the season, you probably pencil down 4 or 5 teams that can win it all. They're in that circle, in that bubble. Let's say you pick 4 teams. Everybody had them in their top four for sure,
Hmm.
100%, I guarantee. And I would be willing to bet that almost nobody had Miami in that bubble. Let's say you had a 4-team bubble, who's going to win it? But you mentioned it. The Heat have been to now 2 finals and 4 Eastern Conference Finals
Hmm.
in the past 4 years. So if you just looked at the playoffs, if there was no regular season, if this was like an NFL season, say a 16-game season, so the playoffs was the regular season basically, then you would be then entering this year, and you would be saying, "Oh, Miami's got to be one of those top 3, 4, 5 teams. They should be a championship contender."
Yeah.
I heard so much during this playoffs of Golden State's championship pedigree. And I understand
Hmm.
Miami hasn't had a championship too recently, not since LeBron left. But if you start looking at Miami's recent history, you go back and you say to yourself, "Oh, what do you have here? You have Eastern Conference Finals, championship, Eastern Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals. Like they've been toward the top of the list of teams in the past 5, 6 years. They've had much success as anybody that hasn't won a championship. As any team that hasn't won, that would be like Boston, Philly. They've had more success than like teams like that. But we don't look at them as that type of contender. Take even Denver. Like they've
Yeah.
had doubts entering this year, but they were definitely considered a possible championship contender ahead of Miami. And Miami's
Hmm.
had gone way deeper playoff success in the past 5 years. Miami's last 5 years, the only teams better than them are teams that have won championship. They're the best team if you look at the playoffs and how deep they've gone of any team in the NBA in the last 5 years that hasn't won. Better than Boston, better than Philly, better than Denver. We'll see if Denver wins this year as far as how far they've gone. But when it comes to preseason and you start projecting who do we got in your championship bubble, they're nowhere near it. You start throwing in teams. You start throwing in Philly. You're throwing in Denver. You start throwing in teams that the Clippers maybe some people had like that haven't had nearly as
Hmm.
much success. So I do feel like they're fairly criticized. Bad regular season. Had everybody put on glasses to be like, this team is terrible. Like, are they terrible? Look at the last 4 years. They've been in the hunt, championship contender the last 4 years, right there. I admittedly picked them wrong. I had to eat this crow too, but I think that regular season really tainted our vision of them. It's like, oh no, this is a good team. This is a really good team.
Hmm.
It's not. It's a Cinderella. Yes, it is a Cinderella. It's a Cinderella on paper, but is it really? Look at the last 4 years. They're a championship quality team.
Yeah. There's a lot of threads we could go here, but the Miami Heat struggled tremendously in the regular season. They struggled health wise too. Only 3 teams played more players than them in the regular season, and that was the Blazers, the Pistons, and the Spurs.
Those are
That says a
bottom
lot.
3 teams, I believe. I think
Yeah,
those are like
they're
literally the
absolute
1, 2, and
trash
3 worst
teams.
record in the NBA.
Outside of Damian Lillard, they're struggling. So people thought like, all right, the Miami Heat are pretty much in that bubble. Maybe they'll make the play-in, but they're not going to do anything serious. They're going to get their ass whipped by the Bucks, and we thought the same. I'll be honest. Even like Caleb Martin as a whole, he had a decent series versus the Bucks. He did a little
Mhm.
better versus the Knicks, and then he lit it up versus Celtics, where you thought maybe he's better than Jaylen Brown. Like Jaylen Brown literally can't even dribble left. I love how ferocious the Miami Heat like defense is on him. They literally just launch the ball. They're just jumping on the floor. Jaylen Brown's been in every rumor. Where's he going to go next? Is he going to go to Houston? Is he going to, stay with Jason Tatum? They're clearly going to develop around Jason Tatum, but the new, CPA, new structuring basically of the NBA contracts is going to be really difficult to have 2 all-star players, 2 supermax players. I know everybody keeps talking about it over and over, but it means a lot. Are you going to pay 2 guys $300+ million? You're going to put $600 million into 2 guys when you're questioning if they could make it together. Do they kind of fill the same need? Do they need more of like they really missed Malcolm Brogdon. He really did a lot for them, and they need a little bit more of that facilitator. Unfortunately, Tatum got his left ankle tweaked on literally the first play. I wasn't even happy. Like some people as fans, they get happy. They're like, oh yeah, we're good now. Like I felt bad for the guy, and every single step he was grimacing. And if he could just put up 35 points, maybe that would rally the troops and get everybody around him. But dude, Marcus Smart needs to play better for sure. Al Horford was exhausted. I think he probably was doing way too much, expending way too much energy coaching on the sidelines. Like Joe Mazzulla was literally just overlooking, watching Horford and Marcus Smart command the troops the whole series. Obviously, everybody's going to come for Joe Mazzulla's head and look for him to get fired. But I mean, maybe they just try to give him a little bit more support. Where do you see the Celtics going? Do you see Jaylen Brown staying around? Obviously, Jason Tatum's one of the best players in the game, but I think my real question is like, do they get rid of Marcus Smart and do they keep Jaylen Brown?
I think I would probably move on from Marcus Smart because
Yeah,
I think he's getting a little older, and it reminds me, better to sell early than too late. I think you could still get something pretty solid, and what they could use. I think they need a true floor general. They need somebody that can manage the ball. Off the top of my head, I would, if I were them, I don't, the cap numbers don't work, but I would take like an old Chris Paul over Marcus Smart right now because you want somebody who can move. I don't think the cap numbers work, so I don't have them in front of me. But I feel like
no,
you could do a
let's
trade
not get
maybe
into
there
that.
possibly if you could move, say, Marcus Smart, and even if you had to throw in another player just to make the money work, I would look at that because I would like to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I know a lot of people against it, and I'm going to rip on them in a second also. But
Let's do it.
I feel like people underestimate how hard it is even to get close.
Yep.
Like, you
Yep.
look at the gutters
Yep.
of the NBA, teams that have been there for like a decade. This is in the NFL where you see teams rotating in and out. Teams getting a gutter, they're there. Charlotte, the Spurs now for a while. They get the one Vinyata, so we'll see that change. But like teams, but they're bad. They're bad for a long time, and people underestimate the Celtics have made 5 or 7 Eastern Conference Finals. They made one final, and I'm going to throw on top of that I feel like the future in the NBA has never been more open. LeBron is on the brink of retiring.
Mm-hmm.
The Bucks look like they're taking a little bit of a step back.
Mm-hmm.
Philly now is clearly just can't seem to get over the hump. Like it's pretty open. The Golden State era seems to be over. I feel like if I'm the Sixers, I'm like, okay, I'm a consistent top 4 team every year. Basically, it's like literally 5 of the last 7 years they've been a top 4 team. That's just the way it is. 5 Eastern Conference Finals. They've been to the finals. Do you really want to throw that away? Do you really want to get rid of that team? And especially they're so young. Tatum
Right.
and Brown can still get better. A lot of players, you can look at them and you can say they're not going to get better because they're peaked. NBA, I'd say peak is around, say, 28, 29 would be peak
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah.
Brown is 26, I believe. Tatum
So
is
good.
25. Like, they should get better for at least another 2 more years. They can cut back on turnovers because turnovers is something you can cut back on. Some skills you can't grow. Some things you can't just get better on. It's harder to increase your vertical leap at that age, but you can, work in
Dude.
the off season on your dribbling, your passing. You can get better. Coaching helps with that. We mentioned that. So
Yeah.
I find them. I know right now everybody is upset in Boston. They want to throw the fist at TV. They're like, trade him, trade him, trade him. Like, you sure you want to do that? You sure you want to blow it up? I think when it is close, I do think you run it back. I honestly do, and I would love to see what they need. Is they have so much depth that they need a floor general more than anything else. Even if they did what seems like an unequal trade, I would take. Chris Paul came to mind, but if you can find another floor general, they don't need scoring. Like, when did they win a championship? They had Rondo. He was not a scorer. You need a floor general that can make the
Mhm.
pieces move around you. You don't need more scoring. They could afford to get rid of Marcus Smart. They don't need the defense. They have so much of that, scoring and defense. They just need somebody that can
Yeah.
move the ball around and set the plays up.
I mean, we went through last episode. We drafted based off of talent. At least that's how I was going about it, and not what I thought they would project, like stats wise, in this series. Like, based off of talent, who are the guys we should watch in the Final Four? And it was all Celtics. Way more than the Miami Heat, at least. The
Oh yeah,
Miami Heat, it's Bam, Jimmy, and then a gap. And even like Tyler Hero, like, oh man, I just wish he was available. And I know everybody's rumoring he's going to be back for game 3, but like, uh, have we seen this since like Boogie Cousins? Like, this gap of like so much time away during the playoffs, like for him to just get back in there. I'm sure he's eager, but I don't know how much we should at least expect out of Tyler Hero.
if he's
I'm more
rusty, does
focused
it hurt
on,
them?
yeah, it may hurt them. It may like ruin the chemistry. I mean, the fact that they're getting so much out of Duncan Robinson right now, and Duncan Robinson's like, egging on the crowd, like, come on, bring on the hate. I'm like, bro, you're dropping 10 points, but those 10 points were loud. Like, I noticed every bucket Duncan Robinson made. They made a difference. Like, I was waiting for Bam to do more, and luckily it was such a blowout that honestly, Bam was their best facilitator yesterday. But the whole point of this conversation was Jaylen Brown, right? So Jaylen Brown, yeah, he's 26, but we've been talking about this man's dribbling every single year, every single offseason. He clearly is really good at driving to the basket, yet he went 1 for 9 from 3 in game 7 with 8 turnovers. Like, why are you shooting? There was one in the fourth quarter where he like clearly could have driven to the basket, but he just slows down. Maybe he's too tired, and he takes like a LeBron James 3. I'm like, you're not old man LeBron James. You're not 40. You're 26 years old. You're 1 year from being in your prime, as everybody says. 27, then you start winning championships, and that's what's going to happen for Nikola Jokic. And Jimmy Butler's career is a whole different level. He's gone through struggles from Chicago to Minnesota. Oh my God, that team was hot garbage. They actually lost to the Rockets that year. I remember. I was looking back at Jimmy Butler's track record, and then he went to Philly and had that awful game versus Kawhi and the bounce shot, and then now he's with Miami, and we've gone through the Miami run. But these players need to go through a lot, and luckily, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are young, but they've already gone through so much. They've already lost in the finals. They've already lost multiple times in the Eastern Conference Finals. If they had Udoka like still around there, that would be nice. I think Joe Mazzulla is probably fine to keep around, but maybe as an assistant coach, I think they could have really used some presence, some like Nick Nurse or somebody like that. But they need an established coach. I don't think Doc Rivers is enough. I don't know who they could go out there and
No.
get, but coaching is definitely something they're missing. Maybe they get like Horford to come and do a little Haslam retirement tour type of thing where he's a coach on the bench for life. I think that would be fun because, I mean, Al Horford's one of the greatest of all time. Like that man's just disciplined and role model, and from Florida to the Hawks to the Celtics, he's had a good run. But top four is pretty good, right? That's the whole point of this conversation.
Yeah.
Top four is pretty damn good. And we're always looking for Kawhi and Paul George and the Clippers to pop off and finally get to that next level. We keep waiting, not even giving respect to the Nuggets, even though the Nuggets have like constantly done well and Jokic's numbers go up in the playoffs. Like everybody's like finally like, oh, well, let's give him his flowers because he's in the finals. But like, are we really unwilling to give anybody credit until they're top two? And even in LeBron's case, when you're top two, sorry, that's not enough. You got to win the final every time. Like, let's give credit for each round. Let's give credit for progressing and moving on. And trust me, Jaylen Brown is going to be one of those frustrating players for me. I hope he's not falling into that D'Angelo Russell, Russell Westbrook, Karl Anthony Towns category for me. Those, I see the talent, I see the capabilities, sort of like me and Dave keep talking about Ted Lasso. Like the show is so good and has so much potential that you're like nitpicking. You're like, come on, man. Like you can't go 1 for 9 from three. You got to like chill with the threes. I know you're down by 30 and that's what happens. Like you're down by so much, you're like desperate. You're like, all right, you're not going to catch up in 5 minutes. Like let's eat away a little, but that requires leadership. And Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown aren't there yet mentally. But I agree. Like, I don't know how much money you could give to him. I don't know if you could like maybe negotiate a Tom Brady like contract out of him. Like, be like, all right, come on, man. Like, help us. You understand? He's such a smart kid. Like, Jaylen Brown is really smart. I think he could figure it out, but obviously everybody wants cash, right? Like
Yeah.
there are these Saudi Arabian leagues right now poaching at Kareem Benzema, offering him like $200 million a year. Like these contracts are insane. The NBA contracts are starting to level off, and I think ownership really wants to kind of flatten the curve and spread out the talent, and they don't want like a KD, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green team to ever happen again. So let's figure out what can we do in the negotiations to limit that possibility. But I agree with you. Let's keep the Celtics together. They've obviously proven they have a lot and they could do a lot, and they're extremely talented. They're obviously going to keep Derek White. That man is incredible. He went from like, let's talk about game 6 a little. Did you watch game 6? Did you catch
Yeah,
the
I saw
end?
the other game 6. That was it. Really, honestly, you could argue the only good game in the series. It was a. I know you're a
Yeah,
Heat
game
fan,
7
but the
sucked.
game, all 7 games, it was not a lot of great games. It was, I think, what, 4 blowouts. So the series as a whole wasn't a super competitive one. That game came down a while. It was a great game. Derek White, he was really the only player that showed up in game 7. You look at him, he played really well. Everybody
That's
else seemed
true.
like they weren't ready to play. Maybe he's just got a little bit more of that dog in him, as they say, and other players seem to be a little more of a cat. But he was ready to play. Other people weren't. Um, that makes me think of Miami in a way, as far as like, and even Jimmy Butler getting Eastern Conference MVP, like, because how many players could come back from that gut punch that was Game 6? How many teams could come back and
Yep.
really play? And Miami's able to do it, where I feel like most of the other league, probably 28 other teams, would have just collapsed. But Derek White, that goes to keeping the team together. I think they have so much talent. Malcolm Brogdon was hurt. If he's healthy, that you want to keep knocking out that door, because you never know. Maybe sometimes you can catch a break. Some people say, "Oh, the break was playing Miami instead of Milwaukee." Debatable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they played well against Milwaukee this year. And look what happened with Toronto when they won the championship. Everybody's like, they can't win. They're playing the Golden State Warriors. Other team gets injured, you win. So like, you have to realize, if you're right there, I think you keep going, because you never know. Maybe something falls your way. Derek White played great, and that's why I'm all for the Celtics staying together. I think they have so much talent all around, and you don't give up on this. It's a lot easier to fix a coaching issue in the NBA than it is to fix a talent issue. The NBA is a talent league. If you don't got the talent, it's hard to compete. There's only one Eric Spoelstra on a team that's making a team that doesn't have as much talent compete.
Mm-hmm.
If you got the talent, you're gonna be close. So, he played well. I liked his attitude. His he seemed like a Heat player on the Celtics, if that makes sense.
Oh
The other
yeah,
way around.
I
He
get it.
seemed like a player, like, oh, that's the type of player that the Miami normally picks up, that you would see
Mm-hmm.
playing in the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they need a couple more of those guys.
Yeah, I think it would be fun for Brad Stevens to kind of take charge and get on the court. Like Pat Riley did this with Miami. Steve Van Gundy. No, sorry, Jeff Van Gundy. No, the other one.
No, Steve.
Steve Van Gundy. Yeah, Steve Van Gundy was coaching Miami.
Stan Van Gundy.
Stan Van Gundy.
That's what Steven said, right?
Thanks, man. Yeah, Stan Van Gundy was coaching Miami, and Pat Riley came down from the owner's box and was like, "All right, man, I'm coaching them now. I've been to so many finals." There was a stat that came out. He's been at 25% of the finals Pat Riley's been in, whether from player to coach to executive.
Wow.
You know, he's been in 19 finals. This man just knows what to do. So he came down. Stan Van Gundy was their coach, and he's like, "I don't like this. I'm going to come down. I used to be a coach, and I'm going to coach this team." And then he did it. He made it work. Brad Stevens could have done the same thing. You know, I don't know what Brad Stevens is thinking about, but I have faith in the guy. He's a smart guy. You know, the Celtics obviously aren't going to just like wash away. The Lakers and the Celtics are back. They're here. They're going to be here forever, for many, many years, for many, many decades. But I just wanted to give like a quick instant reaction, deep dive into Game 7 and what we think about the Celtics and how excited we are for the Heat. You know, I know Eric Spoelstra's not the greatest coach of all time. It's possible, though. You know, he's got a few guys to. He's literally there's only 3 guys ahead of him that have been to more finals appearances. And that's Pat Riley, Auerbach, and of course Phil Jackson. But he's on the same wavelength as, you know, Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr. And, you know, obviously having Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James and guys like that really help. And you need the talent first. So let's stop trying to ship off Jaylen Brown. You know, let's give the guy some respect. He's a top 20 player in the game today, and Jamal Murray's quickly approaching him. Let's get excited to watch Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic on Thursday versus Miami Heat. I'm sure it'll be a blowout. I'm not expecting anything out of Miami, but I'm excited.
Really?
Nah,
you don't think? What about rust?
I think they're
going
to fight.
Be a little rusty.
I hope so. Everybody's like, "Oh, rest." I'm like, all right. So they have 2 days off, and then 2 days off, then 2 days off. Like now they're just in rhythm. I don't know, but everybody's ankle is tweaked right now. Like Jimmy was grimacing again, so I don't know how his ankle's feeling. I just want to lower my expectations. Everybody's projecting the Nuggets to sweep them. Well, I don't know about sweep, but you know, put it down on them. So I don't want to get into that headspace yet, thinking that Miami's got a good shot. But obviously, I love this team. Like I want to see Gabe healthy. I want to see all these guys healthy, but this is not the time of year to be healthy. You know?
No, everybody's hurting. I mean, I guess you could say that's Denver's big advantage is they're obviously there's only 2 teams left, but even the whole playoffs, Denver was like the healthiest team in the playoffs, and you know it's paid for that off of them. Like you look at Denver, I feel like the bill comes due. You look at the whole season. Denver already had the best record the entire season. Technically, they didn't end with it, but that's because they were resting guys in the end. So that was an advantage for them. They were allowed to rest guys in the end because they had the best record up until the final 2 weeks. And because of that, they entered the playoffs as the healthiest team in the NBA. They played the least amount of games in the playoffs, pretty much cruising through mostly. And now they're entering the finals, and they get to reap the reward of being a healthy, well-rested team with basically no injuries on their roster. And that's not that common. You look at the finals. Normally, every team's kind of got somebody that's beat up. I can't remember a team that's really this healthy entering the finals. So they get to have that pay dividends for them. And reverse is Miami. Almost reminds me a little bit of what happened to the Lakers, where by the time the Lakers played Denver, they were just gassed because they were spending so much energy just to get into playoffs. As impressive we've been going about Miami, they played a bad regular season, and now they're going to have to pay for that in the fact that they are beat up and tired entering the finals. So that's what, there is a price for being the 8th seed, for being a play-in team.
Yeah, I mean, they're the second 8 seed to ever make it to the finals. And the only other one was 1999 in New York Knicks during the lockout season where, obviously the stats were skewed a little. But we're running out of time here. I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast, and we'll be back for more. We'll obviously be back for the finals, digging down a little deeper. I hope you guys can come back for some more. And as always, Scotty,
keep it nerdy.
Peace. Peace.
Peace.